I was always the reliable one in my family, the son who helped with everything from fixing the kitchen sink to planning my sister Abigail's dream wedding. We had our differences growing up, but I never thought she would betray me so completely. When her expensive engagement ring went missing, she pointed her finger directly at me. No evidence, no history of theft, just her word against mine. And somehow, that was enough for my entire family to choose her side, pack my bags, and throw me out onto the street. If you know what it feels like to be betrayed by those you love most, leave a comment telling me where you are watching from, and subscribe to hear how I finally cleared my name. Growing up in our middle-class suburban Chicago home, I thought we were the all-American family. My dad worked as a construction manager, putting in 60-hour weeks to give us a comfortable life. Mom taught third grade at the local elementary school. We had Sunday dinners together, went camping in Wisconsin during summers, and generally seemed like the perfect family to outsiders. But beneath that picture-perfect surface, things were more complicated. My relationship with my parents was generally good, though my father had high expectations. He was the type who believed tough love built character. When I brought home an A-, he would ask why it was not an A+. When I won second place in the science fair, he reminded me that second place was just the first loser. Despite his strictness, I knew he wanted the best for me. Mom balanced him out with her warmth and encouragement. She was always my biggest supporter. Then there was Abigail, my sister 3 years younger than me. Growing up, our relationship was a roller coaster. We had moments of closeness, like when I taught her to ride a bike, or when she would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms because she was afraid. But Abigail learned early on how to work the family dynamic to her advantage. She could turn on the waterworks, and suddenly my parents would forget whatever she had done wrong. She had a talent for twisting situations to make herself the victim and me the villain. As we got older, the pattern only became more pronounced. When Abigail crashed my car in high school somehow, I ended up apologizing for not teaching her to drive properly. When she failed her college classes, it was because I had not helped her enough with her studies. Never mind that I was working 2 jobs while maintaining my own scholarship. My parents rarely saw through her manipulations. Despite these frustrations, I remained devoted to my family. When Abigail needed help paying for college after losing her scholarship due to poor grades, I contributed a significant portion of my savings. When my father was temporarily laid off during the recession, I moved back home for 6 months to help with the mortgage. Family meant everything to me, which made what happened later all the more devastating. The trouble began when Abigail met James, a successful real estate developer from a wealthy family. They had been dating for just over a year when he proposed with an absolutely stunning 2.5-carat diamond ring. It was not just expensive, but a family heirloom that had belonged to his grandmother. Abigail could not stop showing it off, and honestly, I was truly happy for her. Despite our complicated relationship, seeing my little sister so in love and excited about her future warmed my heart. I offered to help with the wedding planning, partly to support her, and partly to ensure my parents would not be overwhelmed by the costs. I spent weekends helping search for venues, organize spreadsheets to track the guest list, and even used my connections to secure a discount with a high-end caterer. Abigail seemed genuinely appreciative of my help, which made me hope that maybe we were finally developing a healthier adult relationship. The night everything changed, we had gathered at our parents' house for dinner to discuss wedding plans. Mom had prepared a feast. Dad had opened his special occasion whiskey, and Abigail had brought over wedding magazines and fabric swatches. James was meeting us later as he had a late meeting. The atmosphere was celebratory and warm, a rare moment of family harmony. After dinner, Abigail went to wash her hands before we looked at cake designs. That was when the screaming began. We all rushed to the kitchen to find Abigail frantically searching through the sink, her face pale with panic. "My ring is gone," she shrieked, her voice hitting a pitch that made me wince. I took it off to wash my hands, and now it is gone. Mom immediately joined the search, checking the sink trap, while Dad looked on the floor in case it had fallen. I stood back, knowing too many people crowding the area might make it harder to find. That was when Abigail turned to me, her eyes narrowing accusingly. "You," she said, pointing a trembling finger. You were the last one in here. You came in for water while I was showing Mom the napkin designs. I shrugged. Yeah, I got some water, then went back to the living room. What does that have to do with your ring? You took it. Did not you? She said, her voice hardening. You have been acting weird whenever James and I talk about wedding costs. You are jealous that he can afford to give me this lifestyle. I laughed, thinking she was joking. Why would I steal your ring? That makes absolutely no sense. But she was not laughing. Neither were my parents. They were looking at me with expressions that shifted from confusion to suspicion before my eyes. You did ask to borrow money last month, my father said slowly, as if putting pieces together. You said your car needed repairs. The money I need for my car is way less than what that ring is worth. I replied, feeling a cold sensation spreading through my chest as I realized they were actually considering this accusation. Plus, I would have to be an idiot to steal something that can be traced so easily. You have been stressed about money, my mother added, her voice gentle but her eyes hard. You mentioned your student loans are overwhelming. I could not believe what I was hearing. So, I am struggling with normal bills like most 28-year-olds, and that makes me a thief, I asked, my voice rising with disbelief. Abigail folded her arms across her chest. James is going to be devastated. That ring has been in his family for generations. We searched the kitchen for another hour. No ring. With each passing minute, the atmosphere grew thicker with accusation. My parents began exchanging glances. Then my father asked me to empty my pockets. You cannot be serious, I said. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about, he replied, his tone. One, I had never heard directed at me before. I emptied my pockets. Nothing. Then came the request to search my car. Then my overnight bag. Each intrusion making me feel more violated and angry. When my father suggested I might have already handed it off to someone else, I finally snapped. This is insane, I shouted. I did not take the ring. I have never stolen anything in my life. The fact that you would even think this of me, after everything I have done for this family, is incredible. My father straightened his back, using his full height advantage as he had when I was a child. I did not raise my son to speak to me this way. Either you tell us where the ring is, or you can leave this house. I looked at my mother, hoping for support, but she was staring at the floor. I looked at Abigail, who had somehow transformed her accusatory expression into one of hurt victimhood, complete with glistening tears. Fine, I said, grabbing my bag. Call me when you come to your senses. I did not actually believe they would let me leave. I thought someone would stop me, suggest we all calm down, propose a rational solution. But as I walked out the door, the only sound was my mother's soft crying and my father's heavy breathing. No one called after me. No one followed. It was only when I got into my car that the reality hit me. My entire family had just chosen to believe I was a thief, rather than consider any other possibility. 28 years of trust and love erased in a single evening. I spent that first night in my car, parked at a 24-hour grocery store, too shocked to even cry. The next morning I called my friend Marcus, explaining the situation in a voice that sounded strange even to my own ears. Marcus, bless him, offered his couch without hesitation. That would be my home for the next 2 weeks while I scrambled to find an apartment I could afford. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, something that ached constantly and made simple tasks difficult. I would catch myself staring into space, replaying the accusation over and over, searching for something I could have said or done differently. At night, I barely slept, my mind cycling through memories of my family, wondering if there had always been this conditional quality to their love that I had somehow missed. I tried calling my parents the next day, thinking a night of reflection might have changed their perspective. My father answered, his voice cold. Unless you are calling to confess and return the ring, we have nothing to talk about. I tried my mother next, hoping for more understanding. She answered in a whisper, claiming my father was in the shower. She sounded torn, but ultimately said, We raised you better than this. How could you hurt your sister this way? Before I could respond, she hung up. James, Abigail's fiancé, was caught in an uncomfortable position. He texted me, saying he wanted to believe me, but the evidence was compelling. What evidence? I wanted to scream. There was no evidence, only Abigail's accusation. But I knew from experience that when it came to my sister, rational argument rarely prevailed. 2 weeks after being kicked out, I found a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of the city. It consumed most of my monthly income, leaving me with barely enough for ramen and bus fare to work. I had to explain to my boss why I was suddenly without professional clothes, why I looked exhausted, why I jumped every time the phone rang. She was surprisingly understanding, and even arranged for me to work extra hours to help with my financial situation. At work, I threw myself into every project, volunteering for overtime and taking on responsibilities no one else wanted. Work became my sanctuary, the one place where I was judged on merit rather than family politics. A few colleagues noticed my situation and became unexpected pillars of support. Lisa from accounting invited me to dinner with her family every other Sunday. Michael from IT helped me furnish my apartment with cast-offs from his recent move. These small kindnesses kept me from completely withdrawing into isolation. After 3 months of silence from my family, I finally accepted that this estrangement might not be temporary. I started seeing a therapist using an employee assistance program to afford the sessions. Dr. Patterson helped me process not just the recent trauma, but years of family dynamics that had set the stage for it. We talked about Abigail's pattern of manipulation and my parents' enabling behavior. We discussed my tendency to sacrifice my own needs for family approval. Slowly, painfully, I began to see how I had been complicit in a dysfunctional system. 6 months after the accusation, Abigail and James got married. I learned about it through social media, scrolling through photos of my parents beaming proudly, extended family gathered in celebration, everyone apparently having moved on without missing a beat. There I was, sitting alone in my sparse apartment, effectively erased from family history. I sent a small gift and card to their new address, congratulating them and expressing hope for reconciliation. The package was returned unopened, with "return to sender" scrawled across it in what I recognized as Abigail's handwriting. That was when the last sliver of hope died, and I realized I needed to build a life that did not include them. The holidays were the hardest. Thanksgiving, which had always been a major family gathering at our house, I spent alone with a microwave turkey dinner. For Christmas, Marcus insisted I join his family, but I felt like an intruder in their traditions, smiling politely while fighting back tears. New Year's Eve. I worked a double shift, volunteering so colleagues with families could celebrate. With each passing holiday, the pain dulled, slightly transforming from acute agony to a chronic ache. To channel my emotions into something productive, I focused on my career with an intensity that surprised even me. My work performance earned me a promotion within 8 months. The increased salary allowed me to move to a slightly better apartment and start rebuilding my savings. I also started a side business as an IT consultant, using skills I had developed as a hobby. The extra income provided not just financial security, but a sense of purpose and pride. My new apartment became a symbol of my independence. I furnished it carefully, creating a space that reflected me, rather than the expectations of others. I painted the walls blue, something my father would have never allowed in the family home. I bought plants, learning how to nurture them into thriving greenery. I hung artwork that spoke to me, not chosen to impress visitors. For the first time, I was creating a life based on my own preferences rather than seeking approval. Dating was complicated by my experience. I met several wonderful women, but found myself holding back, analyzing their every reaction for signs they might someday betray me as fundamentally as my family had. One relationship lasted 6 months before she grew frustrated with my inability to fully trust. "I am not your sister," she said during our final argument. "Not everyone is going to stab you in the back." I knew she was right, but knowing and feeling are different things. As my independence grew, so did my perspective. The pain remained, but it was accompanied by unexpected gifts, a stronger sense of self, deeper friendships, and the discovery that I could build a meaningful life outside the narrow definitions of family that had constrained me. I still missed them, still ached for reconciliation. But I was no longer defined by that absence. 3 years passed. I had moved into management at work. My side business was thriving, and I had finally reached a place of relative peace about my family situation. I had not spoken to any of them since that night, though. I occasionally heard updates through mutual acquaintances. Life had moved on, and so had I, or so I thought. Then came the text message that changed everything. We found the ring. Please call. Mom. I stared at my phone for a full 5 minutes, emotions churning so violently. I felt physically ill. 3 years of silence, and now this brief acknowledgement that I had been right all along. I almost ignored it out of pride, but curiosity, and that never quite extinguished hope for resolution, won out. I called. My mother answered on the first ring as if she had been sitting by the phone. Her voice broke as she spoke. We found Abigail's ring. It was in the garbage disposal. We are renovating the kitchen, and when they removed the old sink there, it was lodged in the mechanism. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. After so long, after so much pain, words seemed inadequate. She finally continued, her voice small. Abigail admitted she must have dropped it when washing her hands that night. She was scared to tell the truth once the accusation was made. Still, I remained silent. We were wrong, she whispered. So terribly wrong. Your father wants to speak with you. There was rustling, and then my father's gruff voice came on the line, sounding older and less certain than I remembered. Son, I made a terrible mistake. I should have believed you. There is no excuse for what we did. Where was this humility? 3 years ago, I finally asked, my voice steady. Despite the tempest inside me. I was wrong, he said simply. The words, I never thought I would hear from him. We all were. Can you ever forgive us? I need time, I replied. This does not just go away with an apology. I understand, he said, though I doubted he really did. But we would like to see you, to try to make amends. After ending the call, I sat in my apartment, overwhelmed. The validation I had craved had finally arrived, but instead of feeling triumphant, I felt hollowed out. 3 years of my life spent rebuilding from scratch, all because my sister could not admit she dropped her own ring down the drain. I called Dr. Patterson and scheduled an emergency session. We talked through my options and how to approach a potential reconciliation without sacrificing the boundaries and self-respect I had worked so hard to establish. She helped me prepare statements that expressed my feelings without accusation, and we discussed scenarios for maintaining emotional equilibrium during what would inevitably be a difficult reunion. 2 days later, I drove to my parents' house. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, but I felt like a stranger there. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. My mother stood there, visibly aged, hair grayer than I remembered. She moved to hug me, then hesitated, reading the stiffness in my posture. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. My father kept clearing his throat, but struggling to speak. My mother twisted her wedding band around her finger nervously. Finally, I broke the silence. I would like to hear exactly what happened with the ring, I said quietly. My mother nodded. We were renovating the kitchen. When they removed the old sink and disposal, the plumber found the ring caught in the mechanism. It must have been there the whole time. My father interjected. As soon as we found it, we called Abigail. She admitted she had been washing her hands and must have dropped it. She said once she accused you, she was too afraid to retract her statement. And you believed her accusation without evidence, I said. Not as a question, but a statement of fact. You threw me out of the house, out of the family, based on nothing but her word against mine. We were wrong, my father said again, his voice breaking. We have no excuse. I was about to respond when the front door opened. Abigail walked in, followed by James. She froze when she saw me, her face draining of color. James looked uncomfortable, but nodded in greeting. You, I said, rising to my feet. I would like to hear from you directly why you let this happen. Abigail burst into tears, a familiar tactic. I need to explain, she sobbed. I was so scared. The ring was so expensive. James would have been so upset. James looked surprised. I would have been upset at losing the ring, yes, but not as upset as I was when I found out how your family treated your brother. He turned to me. I always had doubts about the accusation. It never made sense to me. That hit me like a physical blow. You had doubts, but said nothing. While I lost everything, James looked ashamed. I tried to suggest other possibilities, but by then, everyone seemed so convinced. I am sorry. I should have pushed harder. Abigail wiped her tears, visibly collecting herself, when she realized her husband was not backing her play. The truth is, she said slowly, I knew the ring probably fell down the drain that night. But I was terrified of admitting I had been so careless with a family heirloom. And then when Dad started accusing you, it seemed easier to let it happen. Easier. I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. It was easier to let me be thrown out onto the street, disowned by my family, forced to rebuild my entire life from nothing, than for you to admit you dropped your ring down a drain. The full weight of what they had done seemed to finally hit Tinte, my family. My mother began to cry in earnest. My father looked physically ill. Abigail stared at the floor, her usual manipulative tools failing her in the face of the harm she had caused. Do you have any idea what these past 3 years have been like for me? I asked, my voice rising. I lost my home, my family, my sense of security. I lived on a friend's couch, then in a studio apartment I could barely afford. I worked double shifts just to survive. I spent holidays alone while you all continued as if I never existed. And all of this, because you, Abigail, could not tell the truth. And you, I looked at my parents, could not even consider that your precious daughter might be lying. The room fell silent, except for muffled sobbing. I had imagined this moment of vindication so many times, but now that it was here, it felt hollow. No amount of tears or apologies could restore the years I had lost. Then Abigail spoke, her voice, stripped of its usual manipulation. The thing is, she said quietly, it was never really about the ring. I have always been jealous of your relationship with Mom and Dad. They are so proud of you, always bragging about your accomplishments. I felt like I could never measure up. The ring gave me a chance to be the center of attention, the victim they needed to protect. I did not plan to accuse you, but once it happened, I saw how they rallied around me, and I could not give that up. Her honesty stunned me. For the first time in our adult lives, my sister was not playing a role or manipulating a situation. She was simply telling the truth, ugly as it was. I am truly sorry, she continued, meeting my eyes directly. What I did was unforgivable. I do not expect you to forgive me, but you deserve to know why I did what I did. Something shifted in the room then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward authentic reconciliation. For the first time, we were all speaking truth instead of playing assigned family roles. It was painful, raw, and absolutely necessary. After that initial confrontation, rebuilding a relationship with my family required careful boundaries. I made it clear that reconciliation would be on my terms at my pace. They agreed to family therapy, which became the foundation for our healing process. The therapist helped facilitate conversations that had been avoided for decades. We discussed the favoritism that had marked my childhood, my parents' tendency to believe Abigail over me, and the damage that had caused long before the ring incident. My father, to his credit, admitted to holding me to higher standards because he believed I could handle it. My mother acknowledged enabling Abigail's manipulative behavior out of a misguided desire to protect her. Over months of sessions, my parents began to make genuine amends. My father, who had always been reluctant to acknowledge his business acumen, asked for my advice on investments and proudly told his friends about my successful side business. My mother made public apologies to extended family members who had heard their version of events, setting the record straight about my innocence. These actions meant more than words ever could. Abigail had the longest road to earn back any measure of trust. She started with consistent small actions, checking in without asking for anything, respecting my boundaries, and, most importantly, speaking truthfully, even when it was uncomfortable. During one difficult therapy session, she admitted to a pattern of jealousy and competition that had poisoned our relationship since childhood. That admission became the foundation for building something new between us, something based on adult mutual respect rather than childhood rivalry. For my part, I had to learn that setting boundaries did not mean erecting impenetrable walls. Dr. Patterson helped me understand that I could protect myself without completely shutting out the possibility of reconciliation. I learned to express my needs clearly rather than sacrificing them for family harmony. I practiced saying no without guilt, and yes without resentment. The process taught me that I had become stronger through adversity. The years of separation had forced me to build a life completely of my own making. I had discovered resilience I never knew I possessed. My career had flourished without the safety net of family support. I had built meaningful friendships that were chosen rather than inherited. In many ways, losing everything had led me to find myself. Perhaps the most profound lesson was about the nature of forgiveness. I came to understand that forgiving my family did not mean pretending the injury never happened. It did not mean trusting them implicitly or returning to old dysfunctional patterns. Forgiveness, I learned, was something I did for myself more than for them. It meant releasing the anger that bound me to the past and opening to the possibility of new, healthier relationships in the present. 6 months after our reunion, I brought my new girlfriend Emily to a family dinner. Watching my parents make genuine efforts to welcome her, seeing Abigail engage without competition or manipulation, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in years. The dinner was not perfect. There were still moments of tension and old habits threatening to resurface, but we were all trying. That effort meant everything. James surprisingly became one of my closest allies in the family. Perhaps because he entered the dynamic as an adult, he could see patterns that the rest of us had normalized. He often served as a buffer between Abigail and me, gently redirecting conversations when they veered toward old triggers. His genuine remorse for his role in my estrangement formed the basis for an unexpected friendship. Last Thanksgiving, as we gathered around my parents' table, I looked at the faces of my family and realized something profound had shifted. We were no longer playing the roles assigned to us by family history. My father asked for my opinion and actually listened. My mother treated both Abigail and me with the same warmth and respect. Abigail shared attention graciously rather than monopolizing it. When it came time to express what we were grateful for, my father said simply, "Second chances." We all understood what he meant. The journey from betrayal to reconciliation taught me that sometimes family is not about blood but about choice. During those 3 years of separation, I created a chosen family of friends who supported me unconditionally. Those relationships remain central to my life, a reminder that love can come from unexpected sources. My birth family now exists alongside, rather than above, these chosen connections, creating a richer, more diverse support network. I also learned that sometimes, losing what you thought you needed forces you to discover what you truly want. Without the comfortable fallback of family approval, I built a life aligned with my own values rather than external expectations. That hard-won authenticity remains my most precious possession, something I will never again compromise for the sake of keeping peace. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that forced you to rebuild your life? How did you handle reconciliation when the truth finally came out? Leave a comment below, sharing your story. We heal better together when we share our experiences. And if this story resonated with you, please hit subscribe and the like button so others can find this channel too. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the most painful chapters of our lives become the foundation for something authentic and beautiful. The truth always finds its way to the surface eventually.